I'm Jeff Cornwall, and this is the Entrepreneurial Mind. Today my guest is Cameron Powell. We'll be back to talk with Cameron after this.
Talkapolis programming is sponsored in part by the Center for Advanced Dentistry, now serving the greater Nashville area.
Welcome, Cameron.
How are you?
Good. It's good to have you here.
Good to be
You
here.
and I go back a long way.
We do.
And, what I'd like to kind of talk a little bit about is you've always had a passion for photography and video, and while you were in college at Belmont, you were doing more video than photography at that point for a living. And when it came time to kind of graduate, you sort of went off for the paycheck for a while. Talk about that decision to kind of back off from being completely on your own, and kind of what was kind of going through your mind, and why did you make that decision? Because you had a pretty good business built while in college.
Right. Yeah, it was interesting because I graduated in 2007. So that decision was based on the timing of things and the economic market. That was right before the recession hit. Right. So I graduated, started my business while I was in school, and kind of built momentum that first year out of college, and then started to feel the tightness in the industry kind of start to happen.
Yeah, you're the kind of business that would feel it early. You're like the canary in the coal mine at that point.
Right. And I started to feel it pretty quick, and everybody's budgets just kind of tightened up.
Right.
And at that point, I thought, well, I had been dating my now wife for about 3 years, and I wanted to get married, and I wanted to buy a house, and I wanted to do all these things, but that was going to be a struggle if I tried to stay on my own during the recession. So I took the safe approach to it all. I'm a big fan of risk, but I'm not stupid risk too. And
yeah, you were always very careful.
And it's just one of those
things,
things,
which I think is a good trait for an entrepreneur.
Right. I didn't want to get out there too far in,
right.
and it the market all tighten up, and then here I am, and really struggling. So an opportunity came up where I could use my video skills that I had. And I had probably at that point 10,000 hours in Final Cut, and I had edited all kinds of stuff at that point for PBS and CMT and all these guys, and I had the opportunity come up, and I jumped in there and did it, and stayed there for about 3 years, and those 3 years enabled me to make it through that recession. My business still, I kept it going too. The job was flexible enough for me to still do photo shoots and still do other projects and still grow that on the side. And that was the great thing about it, is that it didn't hinder me from doing that.
Right.
And then after the 3 years there, I made the jump back into the full time.
So talk about that, because that's a difficult thing to do when you've got a marriage and you've got a house, and you kind of built this personal overhead. All of a sudden, what you need out of that business is a whole lot more than you needed coming out of college.
Right.
So
absolutely.
Talk about that thought process and how you made that decision to make that jump.
Sure. Before I made the jump, I started focusing my business on generating enough revenue to where I could pay myself what I would need to be paid if I left the full-time job, and started to pay myself that.
So you were able to build that kind of runway for yourself.
Yes.
Wow.
So that out of the job, it's basically I was paying myself what I needed if the job wasn't there, if the full-time job wasn't there. And so I had done that for about 4 to 6 months before made the jump, and after I did that, revenues just increased because then I had more time to do more work, to do more marketing, and the word got around pretty quickly that, oh, well, he's back at it full time. This is what's happening, and it's been on a steady growth ever since.
Now, when you were doing things part-time, were you really, were you trying to focus in on what it specifically you wanted to do in photography? Because you were kind of a generalist, obviously, early on, like most businesses are. I mean, I know you did weddings, you did whatever kind of you could do.
Yeah.
And you've now kind of narrowed in a lot more from that. When did that start to happen?
Yeah, I mean, from the beginning, you kind of have to kind of do everything to, as an artist, figure out your style, what fits you. And then secondly, as you're building the business, you want to have as many different streams of revenue as you can coming in so that you can build it up. Yeah. And, you know, after I made or right before I made the jump to the full-time being on my own in my own business.
The second time.
Yeah, the second time around. So this is like 2010-ish, 11-ish, somewhere in there. I tried to kind of focus on what industries that I had the most contacts in that were growing out of the recession and were doing well, and that kind of lined up with advertising and ironically the entertainment and music business still.
Interesting. So you're doing those two things right now.
And so right now my main mix is advertising, entertainment, and editorial stuff.
That's a nice balance then too.
Because
so the advertising, is it primarily local, or is it at larger accounts, or?
I work specifically with ad agencies most of the time,
okay.
And then they work with me to acquire imaging for their marketing and promo for their clients.
Are you shooting product or people, or?
We're shooting everything.
Okay.
It depends on the industry.
Because sometimes people very much specialize in that.
Right, and the great thing I tried to do in my work is to really nail the people, get the people down, because the people tell the story. The people are the important asset in a business, or if they're an artist, or if they're a model for advertising. Really do good people photography. So I kind of focused on that initially going into it, and then grew the product aspect of it. And I really don't do a lot of the product aspect, but when I do, I'm able to kind of take that process that I approach with people and lighting and everything, and it works out well. So.
And work has been pretty steady and growing?
Yeah, it has. It's been good. Yeah, out of the gate, after I left the full-time job, I started doing a lot of advertising work for Gibson guitars. Right. And it was all stills photography. And I would go to this secret location where all these guitars would be, and there would be hundreds of guitars there and everything. And I shot probably over 100 guitars for them for their catalogs. And so having a steady thing like that in the midst of that first kind of jumping off the diving board there really kind of helped my nerves,
right?
And helped my wife's nerves,
right?
And enabled me to really just kind of have a good revenue stream there as I continued to refine and dial in my other work, my other editorial and music work.
Whenever I talk to my current students about the importance of prudent risk taking. I always tell a few stories about you, and I think they're great stories to tell, because you've not been afraid to take a chance, but you've always made sure to build a pretty safe structure around you as you're doing that. So we're very proud of what you're doing. It's good to talk with you today.
Well, thanks.
Thank
Glad
you.
to be here.